Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode here on RNFM Radio. We're hanging out here on the Pulse of Nursing, Google Hangouts on air, and of course, this is Nurses Week. We're hanging out here May 7th, 2014, so this is Nurses Week 2014. This, of course, is the leading platform for nurses, and we're thrilled to have you tune in with the latest news, trends, and hot topics with the leaders and thought-provokers in our industry. Now, of course, you can always find everything that you need to know about RNFM Radio at rnfmradio.com. Find us under the hashtag RNFM Radio, and that, of course, is cross-platform. What I mean by that, Google+, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, we are out there. Again, rnfmradio.com is where RNFM Radio is. That's where Keith and I are, all of our wonderful guests. And, of course, we are on TuneIn Radio, Stitcher Radio, and, of course, iTunes. And we can't forget about our friends over at ProMed Network, promednetwork.com/RNFM Radio. That's where we're rocking it out. We are everywhere you want to be. So, again, tune in wherever you feel is most convenient for you. And, of course, I'm joined today by my lovely guest, or not guest, I'm sorry, co-host. We don't have a guest today. Just Keith.
I'll be your guest, Kevin.
Yeah, Keith, how are you today, man? How's it going?
I'm great, Kevin. I'm actually not in Santa Fe today. I am in Phoenix, Arizona at the Infusion Nurses Society Conference, INS 2014. So we'll be talking about that. So greetings from partly cloudy Phoenix, Arizona, and we'll talk more about that in a couple seconds.
Well, that's great. And again, Keith, it's awesome that we're here at Nurses Week. I think it's good for us to not have a guest today, and the reason being not because you're not important enough and we enjoy the guests, but I think it gives us an opportunity to really take a look back at what RNFM has been doing, not only since the inception of the show, but also even just this year in 2014. And I think it's been an amazing 2014. Year over year, I think it just continues to get better. And we, of course, want to celebrate that, not celebrate RNFM Radio just in itself, but celebrate nurses and all of those that have been involved with the show, both as community members, our listeners at large, and of course all the guests that we've had on the show. So it's just great to be here. So and to share it, of course, with you, Keith, my awesome co-host here, not in Santa Fe today.
No, I'm not. No, I'm in lovely Phoenix, Arizona, right downtown at the Hyatt Conference Center. So it's great to be here. Going to nursing conferences is it's really fun. And I actually met Cora, the infusion nurse, today. She has been my friend on Twitter for a long time, so we actually met in person. So I love going to conferences and meeting people I've met on social media, and then just chatting with people in the hallway, in the conference rooms, chatted with someone while we were washing our hands in the bathroom. So you never know who you're going to meet and who you're going to hang out with. So nursing conferences, especially during Nursing Week, are really special, and they had a great celebration here last night at the hotel to celebrate all of the accomplishments of the Infusion Nurse Society over the last year. So it's just been great, really high energy crowd, and really fun to see people having a good time together.
Well, and I love the way that you said just celebrating the accomplishments, because I know we often talk about that here on the show, Keith, and it's just great. You're right. I think conferences are just an amazing place for us to have an opportunity for us to reconnect with not only each other on a personal level, but a professional level, to get a pat on the back, to see fireworks or whatever that is. And I'm not saying, I just mean in the proverbial sense, that there aren't any fireworks unless you're actually at one of those conferences where there are fireworks. But right. I just think the pats on the back, really kind of embracing an opportunity to say, you know what, job well done, and take this opportunity to just say, yeah, I did do a good job. I do feel good, and I am proud to be a nurse.
That's right, yeah. And if you want to check out on social media, especially on Twitter, what people are saying here at the Infusion Nurses Society, it's really worth checking out. It's hashtag INS 2014. So INS 2014. You can see photos, you can see people really chatting about the things they're learning, sending kudos to different speakers and people they've spent time with. So, and what I like about this particular conference, the INS conference, is this celebration of excellence they had last night. What they did is they awarded scholarships to people to pursue their CRNI, their Certified Infusion Registered Nurse certification process. They gave scholarships to people to come to the conference. Someone came from Jakarta. There was someone here from Japan. There was an attendee from India. So it was really wonderful to see people coming from all over the world to attend this conference. And one thing that was really pointed out during the celebration last night was that they were talking about how the INS standards of infusion nursing and infusion therapies are starting to be adopted, fully adopted, as far away as China. So what infusion nurses have done for the profession in terms of professionalism, in terms of hygiene, sanitation, safety, those practices are actually being transmitted around the world and adopted hook, line, and sinker in many, many other countries. I was really impressed by the international flavor of the conference and the way that the reach of the INS has expanded globally.
Well, and you're talking about the reach and adoption here. And I think that's actually what we've been talking about for a couple of years now here on RNFM radio. So it really is proof, and I don't want to say pudding because I don't really want to think of pudding, but I guess it is proof that there is a paradigm shift going on and the voices are uniting and we're getting together and we're actually creating that one voice and we are launching not only these platforms but extending them out into the ethers, across the pond and getting our messages out there and getting more of a cohesive message. And so it's great to hear that.
Yeah, it's great. And I love how they're using social media here at this conference. People are tweeting, people are on Facebook. It's mostly Twitter action from the INS for the most part. And I love how they're really making use of their hashtag like we did at the NNBA last year. And I'm sure they're getting lots and lots of impressions. And the point being, not the number of people tweeting, it's actually the reach of it. It's the number of eyeballs that are actually hitting on that information and the way that the excitement from the conference and the interest and all of the learning people are doing here, because this is a learning intensive conference. These are infusion nurses. They're really serious and they have fun too, but they're serious about what they do. Chemotherapy, immunoglobulin, TPN. I mean, they're doing really serious stuff, and they really give their all to learning the best possible techniques. And to see that information disseminating around the country and around the world is just really wonderful. And it shows that nurses care not just about what's happening, right in their little sphere of influence. They actually really care about what's happening in the bigger global picture, and that's really heartening to me.
Well, and social media, as you mentioned, and of course we're using it right now, both our YouTube and Google Plus profile here for the show today. But it was interesting. I have been in the clinical setting more so lately than I have been, say, in the past 6 months, because I've had a few folks that I've needed to check in on, and I've been doing some speaking engagements and things like that. So I've been around, and social media does work, and it really does help with that connection. It was interesting. I was following up with a patient, and the nurse that was caring for this particular patient was asking me about what it is that we do as a company, and then right behind this nurse, another one came in and looked at me immediately. She was like, "Oh my gosh, innovative nurse." And I'm like, "Well, no, I appreciate that. I mean, we're all innovative nurses here." But she had picked up something on Twitter and Facebook, I think, from, I guess she follows me, and they found me, and then it was one of those things where we created that was like an icebreaker for us. Like, so she had connected with me on social media. I didn't know she was there. I just happened to run into her behind, this other nurse, and we were out in the hall, and then a couple of other nurses gathered, and it was almost like a reunion of folks that I'd never really even met and hadn't really fully engaged with on social media just yet, but I really feel proud of those connections, and it was like one of those things that it got the conversation started. And it was just great to just meet these beautiful nurses out there and all of these ideas that they had flowing, and they listened to the show. So if you're actually out there listening, certainly I appreciated meeting you last week, and it was so awesome. So many of you to name, so I can't name everybody, but I just wanted to say that keep up with that social connection and that community, because I think that's really what it comes down to, is that I think as long as we can nurture those relationships digitally,
Mhm.
virtually, that you don't know, because you cross that bridge in real life, so to speak, and boom, you just met someone who maybe you've had a conversation with all along on social media. So again, it's great to just have that engagement. And
Yeah.
and as you said, you've met someone that obviously you had been engaging with online.
That's right. Yeah, I met Cora, the infusion nurse. I think she is at the infusion nurse on Twitter. She came up to me and she said, "Nurse Keith," and we ran and hugged each other. I'll post some photos when I get home and get the photos onto my computer because I don't have a smartphone yet, Kevin, so I can't post them right away.
You
I'll
know,
get there.
we should have gotten that taken care of for this nurses week for you, Keith. I know you said around birthday time for a
Yeah,
smartphone.
that's right.
You know, hey man, we can't certainly force that option on you, but I think that just as long as you're careful, because we've talked about that, how you need to carve out time and not always look down at the phone or the device, but look up, because you don't
That's
know
right.
who you're missing. But
That's right.
again, it certainly can help you keep connected just a little bit more. Like I said, as long
That's
as you're not taking it too far there.
That's true. Well, my 50th birthday is coming up, so I think the iPhone might be what's on the docket for my 50th birthday. But speaking of iPhones, it's funny. During my talk, there was a lot of extemporaneousness during my talk, actually. And one thing I was talking about was social media and smartphones and the ways that they can get in the way and also the way they can enhance our lives. And I was joking about, one reason I've been avoiding getting a smartphone is I don't want to develop that iPhone kyphosis, that smartphone kyphosis where your shoulders are hunched over and your neck is bent because you're looking down at your device. And someone in the audience yelled out, they said, "We should call it iPhosis." And I thought that was perfect.
It is. It is.
iPhosis. Yeah.
Well, and Keith, it's actually no, I think that's great. Maybe let's create a hashtag iPhosis.
I
We
think we
could we could
should.
actually start that here now, if there's not a hashtag iPhosis. But I think it's very apropos that you bring this up. And I talked about social media. You just talked about social media, and I put that video up on RNFM Radio's YouTube channel about using social media, using technology, not being a slave to it, and certainly taking that opportunity to give yourself a timeout. And I know for me personally, I might have said this before on the show, but I know that my kids are very much ingrained in technology, and kids are extremely impressionable, as we know.
Mm.
And they all have tablets or their own computers and things like that, just all the hand-me-downs that I get or forward to them. But I will say that I know for my children, whenever they want to have a conversation with me, now right now I'm actually in my home office at my standing desk surrounded by all kinds of technology. But I know, like let's say if Liam comes up to me and wants to ask me a question, I literally step away from the desk and I get down on his level and I have that conversation. And I
Mm.
didn't want this necessarily to be a soapbox moment, but I think it's just remembering that although you and I are connecting virtually and we're connecting with those virtually, but again, remember those that are actually in your life. And I
Right.
don't ever want my kids to feel like I've got iPhosis, that I'm always looking down at my device or just attached
Mhm.
to it and they can't approach me.
Yeah, that's so true. And the same thing goes, there's been some conversation that I've been privy to here at the INS conference about devices in healthcare. We have to be careful if we have a rolling laptop that we bring up to the bed, if we're using an iPad. In home care, I use my laptop. So we have an electronic medical record for my company now, and I go out to the home and do an intake and do an OASIS. If some of you who do Medicare out there in the world for home care, you know what I'm talking about. OASIS is this labor-intensive intake process for Medicare, and that can really take us away from the patient. So something to think about. And here we are during Nurses Week. Some of us might be thinking of getting ourselves a gift. I'm thinking about getting myself a smartphone. You might be thinking about getting an iPad. Maybe even your institution or facility is bringing in some new technology right now. Maybe they're doing it for Nurses Week. Who knows? So it's just something to think about, that interface in your personal life, like Kevin was just talking about, and also in your professional life with your patients. Make sure it's not creating any kind of barrier between you and the person you're serving.
Oh, agree, Keith. And you actually hit on a point that I just wanted to at least clarify too. In addition, you're talking about the laptops and using EMRs, and we do
Right.
as well. We are all mobile, so all the tablets, smartphones, and devices that we use with that patient care. And again, we have discussions all the time about how it should never be an obstacle
Mhm.
between you and the patient. But from a security standpoint, because we take every effort to make sure that all of our patients' information is secure. I mean, we are very much a HIPAA compliant organization. Just be mindful. Any devices that you're using, this is just Innovative Nurse talking, just to the audience out there right now. If you use any of your personal devices for any kind of work related stuff, I would highly, highly suggest that you are encrypting it in some way or that it is password protected. And I just mean even when you open up that laptop, make
Mhm.
sure that you have to put in a password. Same thing with your smartphone. Put in a password or your tablet because if somebody takes that and then they have access to all of that information, then, well, let's just say that you might be in a little bit of hot water and your patient's not going to be upset. Because obviously, those things actually have to be reported. Per
Mhm.
protocol, you have to report those, and then there's an investigation and so on and so forth. And I don't want to be a negative Nelly here. I just wanted to just give someone the tools to make sure that they know they're practicing safely.
Right, right. That's great. I mean, here at the INS conference, we're talking about safety in terms of intravenous access, central lines, PIC lines, that sort of thing. But there's all sorts of safety. There's that personal safety, and there's also the information. There's the safety of data. So it is very important to keep in mind, you know. And in terms of Nurses Week, I mean, as much as some people disparage Nurses Week and they don't like the hearts and flowers and the candy and things that they get for Nurses Week from their employers, if they get anything at all. But the thing to bear in mind is that it's sort of a time to sit back and reflect. I mean, I think it's a good time to reflect on the profession, like they were celebrating here at the conference last night. And I think Nurses Week is a good time to think about, okay, this is for me, this is my 19th Nurses Week. So just think about those 19 years that I've been a nurse and what I've accomplished and kind of where I'm going from here. So I think it's a nice time just to take a little bit of a pause, don't you think?
Well, I would agree, and because we obviously don't get enough of a pause. And speaking of which, I had posted, I believe it was on Innovative Nurses Facebook page. I don't think I put it on RNFM radio because BuzzFeed had a story or just a little kind of snippet about 14 everyday things nurses can do better than you. And of course, it's supposed to be a little light satire. It's not supposed to be negative or anything that we're lashing out like everybody else. If you're not a nurse, then you just don't exist or you just don't count. It's funny, but one of the things that I didn't agree with because part of it said multitasking, suppressing rage, and tell crazy work stories. But number three was holding their bladders. Now, Keith, you've talked about that as well. How that should never be the standard for nurses to have large bladders or good bladder control or have to throw on a Depends or put in a Foley catheter on themselves or whatever that is. So that was the one thing that I disagreed with. But I certainly did agree with other things like, not overreacting for things. I mean, when we're with a patient or in a situation, and of course, we know how to just I think there was something interesting. It said, "Write endlessly, get bloodstains out of clothes." We definitely know how to improvise. We definitely know how to improvise, and I give nurses a lot of credit, and you should too, because we have to figure out. It's like MacGyver. I mean, you watched MacGyver, didn't you, back in the day,
Mhm.
or know
Yeah,
about MacGyver? Yeah.
yeah.
So we take the shoestring with the used, I would say, like toilet paper roll, and then take like a blade or something and like create some sort of like IV pole or something so that we can set up somebody's IV bag or whatever it
Right.
is and just get
That's great.
really creative with it. So I think nurses have that, and so just take an opportunity to pat yourself on the back, take a breath. That breath can mean so much.
Hmm.
for not only you but for the profession. If we all
Right.
just take a sigh, take a breath, just take a moment.
Yeah, that's true. Good points, Kevin. Man, I want to go back to something you said. You were talking about MacGyver and how we kind of throw things together on the fly. And I might have told the story before on the show, I'm not sure, but back around 1994 or 5, I was going to nursing school. I graduated in 96, and my next door neighbor was a nurse, and he'd been a nurse for about 25 years at that point. Really nice guy. And he was one of those home care nurses who just his car was packed with stuff. He had all the usual implements for wound care and everything, but he had toolbox, and he had wire, and he had everything, wire cutters. He had it all. And he told me, he said, if you're going to be a nurse, something you got to realize, sometimes you're going to be a plumber, sometimes you're going to be a carpenter, sometimes you're going to be a psychotherapist, sometimes you're going to be a troubleshooter in the home. And he told me stories of course, when you're in the home, you're doing skilled care. So, he'd do whatever he needed to do. But then he'd be visiting, some 95-year-old patient. He'd fix her window, he'd fix her toaster. He said, you never know. So he said, especially in home care, you just kind of prepared for every eventuality because you have no idea what's going to happen when you walk through that door. So when you mentioned a MacGyver, I thought of my friend Orrin from Massachusetts and the way that he was prepared for almost anything when he went out to see patients. And I thought that was really cool.
Well, actually, I have to share a personal story as well. So I carry a medical bag that is actually a tool bag because the pockets are better. So it's not a traditional medical bag, and I just like gadgets like that can hold all of my medical tools, my medical devices. But I also carry a tool belt in my car. And true story, there was a situation where one of my patients needed some help with the porch light. It had fried out or something and needed to be replaced. And coming home at night, obviously that can be an issue, and so he got a spotlight that would be able to shine down the light, but obviously he couldn't put it up, and there wasn't anybody around to do it. And I figured, well, I used to do stuff like this. I mean, I've been in construction, so I could wire up a light for you, no problem. So shut down the breaker, pulled the old porch light off, and put the spotlight up, and bing, bam, boom. 15 minutes later, we've got light. And that for me, well, it was kind of cool because I could kind of switch gears and be sort of, construction guy or
Right.
electrician or whatever. Not that I am, but it was great to give that gift because I knew it was going to mean so much to that individual. I knew that it was necessary and it was about quality of life and safety, and I was glad to be there to do that.
That's great. Yeah, you just never know. And for those nurses out there who've never done home care, it's just I'm sure you run into those situations wherever you work. But often there's other people around, there's people you can ask, you can call maintenance and that sort of thing. And it's something that makes home care pretty special, home care nursing. Don't you think, Kevin? When you're in that home by yourself, sometimes the patient could be very elderly or disabled, and here's an opportunity to do something that's not really nursing. But if you listen to my friend Orrin, who told me back in 1994 to be prepared for everything, I mean, it is nursing in many ways, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and I have people who come to me and they want that sort of glitz and glamour of the ICU or the ER, and I think those experiences are of course wonderful because I was an ICU nurse. So I don't want to downplay any of that. But when people come to me and say, "Well, I've thought about home care, but it doesn't really seem that exciting." And I'm like, "You haven't really given it a try." Because it really can be exciting, especially when you get to meet new people each and every day or each and every week. Now, sometimes we have folks that we work with more on a chronic situation, and we might have years of relationships. I mean, in the sense of cumulative, like we might work with these individuals for quite some time, and then others we might only see for a fleeting moment. But it's so exciting to meet all these individuals and really just kind of get a glimpse into their lives and what's going on. And like I said, I hung a light, and I've done more than that. I've fixed faucets, done a little plumbing, you name it. I've probably had my hand in it in whatever way that I could, just to make it easier and better for my
Mm,
patient.
right, exactly. Yeah. And some would argue that that's not really nursing, that you're going beyond, what you're really there for. But, when you walk into a home where there's a need and you know that you can fulfill it and there's something that needs to happen, you just do it. I mean, you're not going to break professional boundaries and say, okay, I'll go do your grocery shopping or let me fold your laundry. I mean, you know where to draw the line, but when it's something in terms of your patient's well-being, welfare, safety, etc., why not? Right?
Well, I agree. And you do have to draw those personal and professional boundaries. And it is interesting. I've actually gone shopping with a couple of my folk. But again, that's a service that we provide. And so it's one of those things where I think, well, you have to read the situation because I'll have individuals who say, "Can I take some of the time that you're going to be with me? Can we go to the grocery store so that you can help me understand the labels and what the ingredients means?" And I think, well, yeah, if I realize this patient really wants to be compliant with their diabetic program, or whether it's gluten free or dairy free or heart healthy, I take that opportunity as a teaching moment. And but yes, I do have to assess to make sure that I'm not sort of overstepping my bounds here, and that it's obviously not an expectation that one day they're going to say, "Hey, Kevin, since you're on your way over here, can you pick up some of those groceries that we shopped for last week?" So yeah, you're right. I mean, you have to be careful
That's
out
tr-
there.
that's true. And the same really goes for when you're working in the hospital too. I mean, it is pretty easy to get overly involved with patients or their families or to promise more than you can really fulfill. So that's something we do have to watch out for, even in the hospital, when we get very personally involved and invested in a patient's care or in the dynamics of the family. So that's another thing we need to watch for, don't we?
I think that's probably one that we might struggle with the most. I know that I personally do, and it's because we have our own family dynamic, and whether it's some things that might have been brought up, let's say that in a conversation between the family and the patient, and it might make you think back on either both a negative or a positive situation in your life. And so it can be really challenging for a nurse to not bring in that personal perspective and just to remain objective. And so I sometimes have to bite my tongue or sort of withdraw for a minute because I don't want to say anything inappropriate because, like I said, maybe I've either been down that road on a personal level, and I think we just have to make sure that we capture that in a way that our patients will understand, again, without putting in our personal views.
Right.
So, but again, it's something that we're faced with whether you're bedside, clinical, or in the home, especially in the
True.
home.
Yeah, true. Very good point. And we could go on this tangent for a while, and I actually wanted to circle back around to Nurses Week and wanted to say, like the celebration that happened here at the INS conference last night here in Phoenix, I really want to, if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about what you and I really appreciate about our careers, about nursing, whether it's how we can be plumbers and fix-it men and carpenters sometimes, or, so what's what's something, Kevin, about your years in nursing that just really kind of lights you up? Like what really comes to mind if you think about your career as a nurse?
Well, I think it goes back to earlier on in the conversation. What really lights me up is, again, the people, and not just, helping them when they are at their most vulnerable, when they don't feel the best. But think about that. They allow us into their lives when they aren't feeling their best. And I just love the connections. And I have patients out there who I might see on the street that I worked with years ago, and I see them up vertical doing well. And I think that really puts a glow on my face and my heart. It definitely makes my heart sing, or if I want to sing, I'm not a good singer, so I won't sing. But I think that really resonates with me because the lasting impression to not only see somebody do well from a clinical perspective and get better physically and maybe even emotionally, but I've made a connection in some way because they will come up to me on the street and they'll remember me. Sometimes they
Mhm.
don't might not remember my name, but they know that I helped or I was part of their care or involved in some way, and they wanted to thank me for that. And I didn't need that thanks, but I'll tell you what, it really does feel good.
It means something, doesn't it? I mean, it's nice to get a thank you once in a while. I mean, it's not why we do this, but it does feel really good, doesn't it?
It does, and I also I obviously can't say, or I should have let it off with, one of the things about nursing is just that it's so diverse and multidimensional that I've been able to create several uh, organizations or partnerships or practice in the way that I've wanted to practice. I think that is probably first and foremost. And I don't want to downplay the whole connection with my patient, but the beauty about nursing and what I've done as an entrepreneur, it's allowed me and afforded me the opportunity to practice nursing the way that I've always wanted to practice and the way that I think nurses should be practicing.
Right. Yeah. So, Kev, I mean, you've worked in home care. I mean, you have a home care specialty case management home care company now. You worked at Hopkins in Maryland. That was one of your goals, right, early in your career. So, can you do you want to touch a little bit on the differences between sort of the satisfaction you got, say, working at Hopkins, which was a real kind of capstone moment for you in some ways, and then the satisfaction of doing what you do now? You know, what's the difference, and what are the similarities?
Well, I think that there are both similarities, but here's the thing. What I can tell you first about Hopkins is that, Keith, right out of nursing school, I got a job at what at the time, and some of you might disagree, but the number one institution in the country, at least for several specialties. And this was right out of school. So I flew out there for an interview. I met with the team, and by the time I got back to Boulder, I had already had a job offer. And for me, that was really exciting, fresh out of school. And of course, I had experience, in other areas, but that to me felt like, okay, I made it because Johns Hopkins, I can work there. They want me to work there. They really value me, and it. From that point on, I skipped to work every day, and I talked about that on the show.
Hmm.
I loved the
Right.
learning opportunities. I
Right.
think that Hopkins, and I think a lot of the teaching hospitals, really mimic, or they do try to, I think, copy and embrace that idea of collaboration and interdisciplinary team that is very cohesive. And I just felt very supported,
Hmm.
always supported. And so to be a part of that, not because it's number one in a lot of people's eyes, but just the fact that it is world renowned. I got to meet a lot of awesome specialists out there, healthcare providers, residents, physicians, from resident or intern to resident to attending, and then of course the awesome nurses and some of them I still keep in touch with, and they're still there.
Hmm.
And so I think that was a gift to say right out of school I got to work at that amazing institution and have that experience.
Hmm.
I basically, to be honest, Keith, I got what I wanted. I got exactly what I wanted.
Right.
I was working toward that in school, and I got it.
That's great. I mean, what a great experience to start off your career in that way. So, and then contrast and compare that with what you do now. I mean, is it equally as satisfying in terms of the learning, or is it just different kind of learning that you do because it's a whole different world you're in now, you know?
It is. So, Keith, if for the nurses out there who have been in a specific subspecialty area, we get to know a lot about that area. So cardiovascular was certainly my area of expertise. I got to know all of the medications, preload, afterload, all about perfusion and VADs and everything. And I consider myself a very skilled nurse in that sense. But what I do now, and I thought the learning was just amazing at Hopkins. What I do now, the learning is, I think, literally off the charts.
Hmm.
And I appreciate the technology that I have available. I appreciate the teams that I have in place that have helped me bounce ideas and to discuss and really collaborate. I collaborated at Hopkins, but I collaborate way more now because I have to. Because when we're in the field, we you don't know what you're going to find. I mean, I've found some pretty amazing things. I've had trauma. I've actually walked up on a pretty much a traumatic situation, or say trauma, in the sense of I didn't have the respiratory support that I needed. I didn't have, any kind of trauma bag with me. I had to like think, okay, what's in my head because I have to resuscitate this person. I've literally walked up on an unconscious, not breathing individual in a home, and I had shoddy cell service. They didn't have a landline,
Oh
and
man.
it was one of those things where you have to be like, okay, just pull yourself together. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I literally was doing compressions and trying to revive, and then run out the front door to try to get a cell signal so that I could call 911 and get them there. Fortunately, I was able to do that. I had to like put my phone out on the porch and scream into the speakerphone to tell them that I'm a nurse, I'm on site, I found this patient, and fortunately they came, and everything actually worked out in a positive situation.
Mm.
And I didn't want to go off on a tangent, but I guess it's just one of those things where I thought Hopkins was like the end all be all for me as far as excitement, bells and whistles. It was sexy, but what I do, and it doesn't have to be like, I don't have to walk up on a situation like that all the time
Right.
to make it fun.
Right.
I think that I save or help save more lives than I ever did in a team at Hopkins because we're working in the community and we're actually hitting things before it becomes a critical situation.
Right.
So,
So like you said, you've said that certain types of work might not seem so sexy in a way because, ICU and all these things, not to disparage ICU nurses. I mean, it's amazing work. But I've heard, say, home care nurses say, "Oh, I'm just a home care nurse." It's that just kind of thing. Or I'm just a med surg nurse, or I'm just a hospice nurse. And I always tell people, just drop the just say, I'm a med surg nurse, because med surg is important. They all have their place. And if all of us flock to the things that everyone says are the most important, then none of us would be left to do all this other work that's equally as important. It's just, it doesn't necessarily have the, I don't know if you would use the word glamour, but there's something about, ICU and all those types of more intricate and technological kind of processes that we do in nursing that can seem more glamorous on some level. I don't know.
well, and wouldn't you agree? I mean, even from the home care setting too, Keith, because I know you've been on the quote unquote non-clinical side of things, but or in the at the bedside of a hospital or organization like that.
Mm-hmm.
However, take this for example, because of what nurses really have to know. So patients in the hospital, and let's say you've got a pulmonologist involved, a neurologist involved, maybe a nephrologist, and then of course the hospitalist. So just kind of the technical, the PCP or whatever, just the generalist there. So you've
Right.
got like four physicians or four providers there, and each of these individuals, him or her, knows basically their specialty. And of course, I know that spills in. I'm not saying that a physician just knows like the kidneys or nephrology and that's like it, but from a nursing perspective, think about that. Those four subspecialties of healthcare that these providers are providing, you as a nurse need to know at least on some level, have to be able to wrap your head around like all four of those
Mm-hmm.
subspecialty areas for that
Mm-hmm.
one patient. And I would say, I would predict, at least maybe in your setting, you need to know a good amount from all of those subspecialty areas. And I don't want to discredit doctors in any way and specialties and whatnot. But with nurses, we do have to like really bind all of that up
Mm-hmm.
and look at that global picture.
It's true, right? And yeah, it's that global picture. It's being able to really turn on a dime in a way, and also leave no stone unturned to carry that metaphor further. That you never know what you're going to come up against, and like I said, whoever works in whatever specialty, whatever area they do, that's their particular contribution. So it's really fascinating. And as much as we talk about nursing on the show and we write about it, there's always more to talk about, there's always more to reflect on, because I feel like nursing is, I mean, it's becoming more specialized on certain levels, but it's also, I don't know, there's a sense I get, it might just be me, that the profession's coming into its own in various ways. Nurse practitioners and advanced practice nurses just got the okay, the legal right to practice without a supervising physician in New York State. That's happening in different parts of the country. Scopes of practice are expanding, and I feel like nurses really are coming into their own in terms of what they can really accomplish. So it's exciting to hear about all these changes that are happening.
Well, and speaking of changes, and you talked about advanced practice nursing, there was a story that came out, I think it was earlier this week. Well, let's see, today's Wednesday. It might have even been late last week,
Mhm.
where they were studying that nurses and advanced practice nurses, so RNs and then NPs at whatever level that you are, they have really been adopting technology at a pretty good clip. And so I felt like, for me personally, as a technology evangelist or enthusiast, I almost felt like we were stagnating a little bit and always kind of blaming the computer, or that's the obstacle that I've got to get over, just giving my paper chart because I just want to like write things up. But I think nurses want to have access to that reliable information, and we do want to see the global picture. And I was pleased to actually see information out there that was stating that nurses are now, there is an uptick, there is a trend that we are really embracing technology at a pretty rapid pace,
Mm.
sometimes even compared to other healthcare providers out there. So it was just great to hear that.
That's great. Yeah, that's really exciting. Yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for, like someone was saying today at the INS conference, and there's a lot to look forward to. And there are always there are always expansions and new horizons for us to look at, to embrace, and new changes coming down the line. So, whether it's EMRs or it's all of these new infusion techniques that are happening now, there's always somewhere for us to go. There's something new for us to take on, and I really appreciate that about nursing.
Well, and speaking of, a place to move to, or again, the collective or the community, and as far as a resource is concerned, Keith, I think we should probably take this opportunity to discuss some of the things that we've been involved with as far as the community at large out there. And we talked a little bit about technology, and I just wanted to actually mention Brittany Wilson, the nerdy nurse out there. She, of course, not only this week has a nurses giveaway. So if you head over to thenerdynurse.com, looks like she's got a total of 263 entries at this point. And of course, the title of the post is 2014 Nurses Week Giveaway. And of course, it looks like there's some scrubs and nursing shoes, a $50 Amazon gift card, of course, her book, and I'm sure she'll sign it if you'd like. And of course, other books out there, it looks like The Adventures of Nurse Nicole, N is for Nurse, Nicole Brown. We had Nicole Brown on the show.
Hmm.
And of course, Back to the Basics, a pocket guide to self-care by Elizabeth Scala. Again, but my point being is that, Brittany and Elizabeth, and of course all of Beth Boynton and all of these individuals out there, Brittany did a wonderful job creating that blog carnival that we've been a part of. And
Hmm.
I just wanted to mention that because it's given us an opportunity to not just connect only on the surface, but I think more granular with each individual blog, and just sort of the nuances of how we are as clinicians or as entrepreneurs. And I feel the love spreading. I feel the paradigm shift working toward the ultimate goal of this, again, the collective voice.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to mention Brittany and just give her props out there. Annette Torsini's part of the blog carnival. It's just been great to have that collective out there, and we're all nurturing and cheering and hurrah and just on the sidelines like you go, and
Right.
that's just awesome.
It is awesome, isn't it? Oh, and hey, speaking of Elizabeth Scala, you mentioned her, and
Right.
this week, most of you know, hopefully, some of you may not know, that the Art of Nursing Telesummit's taking place this week. Today is day 2. No, I think today is day 3, actually.
Day 3.
Today's
Yeah.
day 3. So there have been some amazing presentations. I haven't seen them all yet. I haven't had time being here in Phoenix, but I've watched a few of them. And some of those folks have been on RNFM radio before. Some will be on RNFM radio who are not quite yet. And it's the Art of Nursing is a great place to hear what some nursing leaders are talking about, hear what they have to say, and also to just tune in to the CEUs that Elizabeth is kindly offering for very low cost, and also just Elizabeth's mission of lifting up the profession, the art of nursing. There's plenty of talk about the science, and she really wants to focus in on the art. And I think the first video of the whole Telesummit series was the woman whose name escapes me right now, she plays Florence Nightingale. She is in character as Florence Nightingale, and she was just amazing. It was like Florence Nightingale was right there on the Google Hangout, and I was just so taken by that. Did you happen to see that one, Kevin?
I haven't seen that yet, but I will be sure to watch that because I'm going to be with Elizabeth on Friday evening as a wrap up. And did you already do yours, or are you doing one later on this week?
Tomorrow night, Thursday.
Tomorrow night. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be on the wrap up then. I think our friend Laura Lewis was on last night, I believe. So I missed that one, unfortunately. But there's a lot going on at Art of Nursing. I really recommend checking it out. And where do people find that, Kev? It's elizabethscala.com/AON. Is that correct?
Yeah. And here's the thing, if you just follow the hashtag Art of Nursing, you're going to find anything and everything, at least as far as communications out there. And Elizabeth, I talked to her last week, so she and I probably talk about once a week. Just I consider her a good friend now, and so she was just giving me some updates. So she's had a lot of conversations out there about Art of Nursing on Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and YouTube, and she's done some amazing videos. I mean, she's really kind of getting comfortable with the camera, and that's another thing that I just really want to make a comment as far as technology is concerned. Keith, you've actually taken to YouTube. You're on the camera now. And Elizabeth is really kind of playing that spot in YouTube. So how do you feel it's been with YouTube? Because, I mean, we've heard your voice, and we've seen you on a few of these Hangouts, but what has that been like for you?
Oh, it's been fun, actually. I just did a video today here from Phoenix. I haven't posted it on yet, but it's on iMovie. I was just finishing editing it when we were finishing, just before we started this broadcast. So it's really fun. I love just getting in front of the camera for 3 or 4 minutes and just espousing some wisdom or some insight I've had. It's not always wisdom, but it's sometimes my excitement or inspiration or something I want to share. So, Kevin, you were there while we both broke into radio. We started podcasting, and that was really fun with Anna Morrison back in 2000, whenever that was, 2012. It seems like so long ago. But the video's the next frontier, and you've helped push me in that direction, so thank you very much. And the next thing is to be on an iPhone and posting videos from wherever I am on vacation. So it's really fun to reach people on a different level. And it's one thing to write. I've been writing for years. I've been writing my blog for almost 9 years. But it's another thing to get in front of people and just talk. It has a different impact, different energy to it.
Well, I agree, and I've always talked about the level of connection, I think, goes up quite a bit when people see your face and they see how genuine and sincere you are when you are talking to them, that you do want to help them, because what you talk about, Keith, is informative. It's obviously for personal and professional growth. So taking it to that level is great. And the fact that RNFM Radio, we can do that video, that's fantastic. But we still obviously want to remain as a podcast also for the convenience factor, because you can't obviously watch, please don't watch YouTube while you're driving down the road. No. But the beauty about it is you can certainly listen to us via the podcast. But I wanted to make at least another sort of note on that is, so you, Elizabeth, even Lori Brown, the Empowered Nurse, and there are a few of you out there that have started to embrace the technology. You're using it. You're becoming more savvy, because you know what? You are. You're nurses, and you are ultra savvy. You are innovative. And so I don't want any nurse out there to think that they need to create these other obstacles, like, oh, they can't do it, they don't understand it. Well, you know what? There are so many resources out there. You can Google just about anything. And, of course, you can certainly hit us up here at RNFM Radio. Watch what we're doing. We're certainly open to answering any questions. So if you hit us up under the hashtag RNFM Radio and you need to ask us a question about how we do something, and we can answer that quickly, we certainly will. And we try to give tutorials, because that's what you're doing too, is a bit of a tutorial. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For me, it's more a tutorial around the things I'm thinking about. You know,
Hmm.
I have done a couple videos on interviews, interview skills, those sorts of things, and I've done a few interviews about LinkedIn, the ways that I think nurses can use LinkedIn in a more savvy way to really expand their network and really authentically um, connect and with other nurses. Just sort of really how to touch base with that world out there that's just ripe for the picking. Like you say, sometimes the low hanging fruit. Tons of nurses hang out on social media, and if you just learn how to do it. So I like to talk about that stuff too. And sometimes I just have a thought that I think, wow, that would be great to share on video. That would be maybe more powerful than a written piece. So actually just did my first book review the other day by video, and I'm going to be posting that in a couple days. So there's so many different things to talk about. And oh, speaking of which, pardon me for a second.
No
This book
worries.
this book is really wonderful. It's The Call of Nursing, and it's by William B. Patrick. And he didn't actually write the whole book. It's actually 23 different nurses writing about their work in nursing and their journeys. This is a great book. I'll be writing a review and doing a video review of that as well. So there's lots of great stuff up there. And Kevin, speaking of great stuff, we've been talking almost an hour.
I
Can't
know, I
believe it.
know. Well, it's Nurses Week,
Amazing.
and we just want to celebrate nurses,
Yeah,
and
that's
and I
right.
think we've done that. It's all been positive today, and that's really, I think, where
Right.
we wanted to keep it. We wanted to keep
Yeah.
it on the level, on the
And
positive level.
right. And speaking of positive, for any nurse who would like to do some coaching with me, or anyone that they don't have to be a nurse, I always offer a 30-minute complimentary consultation, whether you want to actually coach with me or not, but I offer 30 minutes of my time to anyone. So for two people listening to this show right now, if you email me at keith@nursekeith.com, I'll give you an hour of my time. So there's no obligation. You can spend an hour with me on the phone talking about anything you want. So two people, just the first two to get in touch, just email me at keith@nursekeith.com, and I will give you an hour of my time by phone or Skype, and we can chat and just see what you want to talk about. And Kev, we have a bunch of T-shirts around. So what do we want to say about that?
Well, Keith, we've had these shirts for a while, and the thing is we need to pay it forward. We need to get them out there. So I think what you need to do is hit us up, hashtag RNFM Radio. Let us know that you listen to the show. And Keith, I don't know how many shirts that we have. We have women's sizes and men's sizes. I think I'm actually wearing one. So if you're on the Google Hangout, I have a few of these. I don't know how many you have in a box. You've got a box. I've got a box.
I have
But
a lot.
I think we need to give out quite a few of these things. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know if we pick a number to say 10 or 20 or more than that, but I think what you need to do is hit us up, hashtag RNFM Radio, and just make a comment. Let us know that you heard the show today. What are you doing to innovate? What are you doing for Nurses Week? Have you taken a breath? And if you haven't, then definitely take that breath, and then after the breath, let us know what you did.
Hmm.
Let us know that you're embracing Nurses Week and that you're proud to be a nurse, and that you're just going to keep on keeping on. And we will certainly send out. Now, of course, we need the logistics here. We need your address, and of course, don't post that on social media. So
No.
if you just email us at insider@rnfmradio.com, then of course that will all be confidential. But if you hit us up, hashtag, we can engage with you on social media. We can then, of course, get you on a direct message or whatever we need to privately, so that we can send you a shirt. So I don't know, Keith, should we just pick a number, or we just go until we're out of shirts? I don't know. I mean, but definitely hit us up, hashtag RNFM Radio, and let us
Just
know
get
what
in
you're doing.
touch.
Yeah,
Just
just
get
get
in
in touch,
touch.
and we'll send you out a shirt. Again, we have men and women. We'd love to just get these shirts out and have you wearing them proudly.
Right. Let's say 14 for now. 14 for
14 for now.
2014.
2014, we'll do 14 shirts. Sounds good.
That's right. And then after that, we'll just go from there. But if you want a shirt, let us know, and we'll send you one. Now, Kev, there's a lot coming up in the next couple months. I want to let folks know that next week, the week of May 11th, we actually won't be doing a live show. You can always go to rnfmradio.com and listen to any of our archive shows, or our YouTube channel where you can find them as well, or Google Plus, or anywhere else. So the 21st, we have something on hand, but I'm not sure what's happening on the 21st. I can't remember at the moment. Kevin, if you can help me out there, that would be helpful. And on the 28th, we actually just had a cancellation from Gail Ingram from New York City, so we will be rescheduling her. So stay tuned for what will be happening on the 28th. Now, on June 4th, we have a live Google Hangout with Sue Bach. She's a life and leadership coach. We're going to have a great conversation about life coaching and leadership coaching with Sue. On the 11th, it's a very exciting show. June 11th, we just confirmed this. We are going to have 4 leaders of the new nurse coaching movement. We are going to have Mary Elaine Southard, Sue Luck, Linda Bark, my mentor, and Barbie Dossie. So we're going to have 4 amazing nurse leaders live on a Google Hangout on June 11th, so don't miss that. And Kevin just reminded me that Sarah Santacroce, she is my Switzerland-based social media and LinkedIn mentor and expert. She is so wonderful. She will be live here on Google Hangout on May 21st. So definitely stay tuned for that, and that is going to be at 3 o'clock, no, actually 2 o'clock Eastern on the 21st. So just go to rnfmradio.com for all of that. So if you want to learn about LinkedIn, especially LinkedIn and other social media platforms for nurses, the 21st is the day to listen in to Sarah Santacroce, and she's great. She's done many Google Hangouts. She's a really wonderful speaker. And there's plenty coming up in July and August too, folks. So, Kevin, it's going to be a really great summer. We have a lot planned, a couple vacations here and there, but we're going to have some great guests, and there's always more pre-recorded podcasts being uploaded too.
Always, Keith. And you know what I wanted to make note of, because not only because it's 2014, but just because it just popped in my head about 30 seconds ago, because we were talking about helping others and submitting questions. If there's anything that you think Keith and I can help you with, if there's a question, a comment, something, certainly hit us up. We do have that texting and voicemail line, 720-466-3022, or hit us up on hashtag RNFM Radio on any of our social media platforms, and we'll grab it. You know what I'd actually like to do, Keith, and give everybody an opportunity to do that, and certainly we will try to grab as many questions as we can out there. And one of the things that I wanted to do today, but we've already burned up almost an hour, is I get a ton of questions, and I'd love to answer those on the show. So I think it would be a great opportunity for you and I to at least pick 1 or 2 questions each week and just give an answer out there to the community that someone might need to know something. And it might be a question that we can answer fairly swiftly because we have the experience to do so, depending on what that question is. So I just wanted to offer that up to the community. So hit us up, hashtag RNFM Radio, and we'd be glad to bring that on the air if it's something that we feel like we can answer for you.
Oh, perfect, Kevin. That's great. That's a really good plan. And yes, and folks, if you do want to have one of our wonderful T-shirts with actually our old logo, not the new logo, there will be collector's items, so you definitely want to get them. There's only a few hundred.
Yeah, it's like Web 2.0, because now we're Web 3.0, so it's like
true.
2.0, because we're moving on to 3.0. But it's good to have like the antique, so to speak, which was only like 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's like having an RNFM Radio Model T.
No, that is funny. That's just ridiculous. All right. Anyway,
that's great.
You know, Keith, it's been awesome hanging out with you today, and I'm glad that you're having a good Nurses Week. I'm glad that you were able to share with those there in Phoenix, and of course, I've been thankful to be with the nurses out there, both on a clinical side, those nurses I don't work with on a daily basis, but the nurses that I do work with on a daily basis. We're all celebrating. You know, it's a celebration every day, nurses.
That's right. Well, Kevin, happy Nurses Week. I'll let you close out the show. Thank you, everyone, for being here, whether you're listening live or listening to the archive version or watching the archive version. So thanks very much, Kevin. You're one of my favorite nurses in the world, and let's just keep on keeping on.
Sounds great. And back at you, sir. The feelings are mutual. Of course, we hope that you continue to feel uplifted, motivated, and ready for something that moves the needle for you. Innovate and create, find passion in your work and, of course, in your personal life. And we look forward to having you not only take care of others, but remember, take care of yourself. And I actually need to give a dose of that to myself as of late. And of course, we want to invite you back here on RNFM Radio at rnfmradio.com and all of our social media platforms under the hashtag RNFM Radio. This, again, is where we're hanging out on the Pulse of Nursing. So stay tuned for our next episode here on RNFM Radio, and we look forward to you joining us right there.